Picture this. Tonight, while you sleep, every telescope on Earth suddenly turns toward the same patch of sky. Astronomers in Tokyo, London, and New York are staring at their screens in disbelief. A brilliant star has appeared exactly where the Star of Bethlehem once shone 2,000 years ago. But this isn't just any star. It's impossibly bright, defying every law of physics we know. What would happen if the most famous star in history returned to guide humanity once again? Welcome to our channel, where we explore forbidden questions and hidden truths of history, religion, and the unknown. If you love journeys that challenge what you thought you knew, make sure to join us, because today's story may change the way you see everything. Let's begin our journey back to that first miraculous night, when 3 wise men followed a mysterious light that would change the world forever. Chapter 1. The Original Light. 2,000 years ago, in the deserts of ancient Babylon, 3 wise men noticed something impossible in the night sky. A star had appeared where no star had ever existed before. It wasn't just bright, it was calling to them. These weren't ordinary men. They were magi, scholars who spent their lives studying the movements of stars and planets. They could predict eclipses, map constellations, and read the heavens like a book. But this star was different. It moved against the natural order, leading them on a journey that would take months. The Gospel of Matthew tells us these wise men traveled hundreds of miles following this celestial guide. They carried precious gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, not knowing they were heading toward the birth of someone who would split history into before and after. The star guided them with perfect precision, stopping directly over a humble stable in Bethlehem. What made this star so special? Ancient records from China, Babylon, and Rome all mention unusual celestial activity during this time period. Something extraordinary was happening in the heavens, something that caught the attention of astronomers across the known world. The star's appearance wasn't just a pretty light show. It was a cosmic announcement, a divine GPS system guiding witnesses to the most important birth in human history. When the wise men found baby Jesus, they knew they had followed more than just a star. They had followed a miracle. Chapter 2. The mystery that haunts astronomers. For centuries, scientists have tried to solve the riddle of the Star of Bethlehem. What exactly did those ancient wise men see? The answer has become one of astronomy's greatest unsolved mysteries. Johannes Kepler, the famous astronomer, spent years calculating the positions of planets during Christ's birth. He discovered that Jupiter and Saturn came together in the constellation Pisces around 7 BC, creating an unusually bright appearance in the sky. Could this planetary dance have been the biblical star? Chinese astronomers kept detailed records of a guest star that appeared around the same time period. This mysterious object blazed in the sky for weeks before disappearing, leaving no trace behind. Modern scientists call these events supernovas, dying stars that explode with incredible brightness. NASA has used powerful computers to recreate the exact night sky from 2,000 years ago. They found comets, planetary alignments, and stellar explosions that all could explain the biblical account. Yet none of these natural events perfectly match the star's described behavior, stopping over Bethlehem, moving independently of other celestial objects. The debate continues to rage between those who believe in a supernatural miracle and those seeking a scientific explanation. Perhaps the truth is more mysterious than either side imagines. Perhaps the Star of Bethlehem was something entirely beyond our current understanding of how the universe works. What if the star wasn't meant to be explained by ancient astronomy or modern science? What if it was waiting to return when humanity was ready to witness something truly impossible? Chapter 3. The Impossible Return. Imagine this scenario. It's 3:17 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dr. Sarah Chen is finishing her night shift at the Hubble Space Telescope Control Center when her computer screen erupts with alerts. Every satellite, every observatory, every amateur astronomer's backyard telescope is detecting the same impossible phenomenon. A star has appeared in the constellation Leo, burning with the brightness of Venus, but positioned where deep space should be empty. Within minutes, the discovery spreads across social media faster than any viral video in history. Star return begins trending worldwide as billions of people step outside to witness the impossible. This isn't just any star. Its light pulses with mathematical precision, following patterns that seem almost like a heartbeat. Radio telescopes detect signals coming from its direction, not random cosmic noise, but organized patterns that suggest intelligence behind the phenomenon. Dr. Chen calls her supervisor, her voice trembling with excitement and terror. It's in the exact same position as the Star of Bethlehem. I've checked the ancient calculations 3 times. This is impossible, but it's happening. News networks interrupt regular programming worldwide. The president is awakened at Camp David. The Pope calls an emergency meeting. Islamic leaders in Mecca gather for urgent discussions. Hindu temples in India ring bells as priests declare the return of divine light. But the star isn't finished with its announcements. As Earth rotates, people across every time zone report seeing the star in their local sky simultaneously, a physical impossibility that breaks every rule of astronomy. The star appears to be everywhere at once, watching over humanity like a cosmic guardian returning from a 2,000-year absence. Chapter 4. The signs begin. Within 6 hours of the star's appearance, reports begin flooding in from around the globe. These aren't just astronomical observations. Something fundamental about reality itself seems to be changing. At Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, a 10-year-old girl with terminal cancer sits up in bed for the first time in months. Her doctors can't explain why her tumor markers have dropped to normal levels overnight. Similar cases pour in from Tokyo, London, Lagos, and Sao Paulo. Hospitals worldwide report mysterious recoveries that coincide exactly with the star's appearance. In a monastery in Tibet, Brother Michael, a man who has never studied ancient languages, begins speaking fluent Aramaic during morning prayers. His fellow monks record him reciting passages that match Dead Sea Scroll texts, discovered decades after his birth. This phenomenon spreads to convents in Mexico, seminaries in Kenya, and meditation centers across Southeast Asia. Animal behavior becomes increasingly strange. In Yellowstone National Park, wolves, bears, and elk gather peacefully in the same meadows, their natural predator-prey instincts seemingly suspended. Zoo animals worldwide refuse to eat, instead gazing upward with an intelligence that zookeepers have never witnessed before. Technology begins malfunctioning in ways that make no scientific sense. GPS satellites lose signal, but only when calculating distances in the star's direction. Cell phone cameras automatically focus on the star, even when users try to photograph other subjects. The International Space Station reports that their navigation systems keep pointing toward coordinates that don't exist on any star chart. Scientists scramble to understand these connected phenomena, but their instruments detect energy signatures that don't match any known form of radiation. The star isn't just visible light, it's emanating something that affects living consciousness itself. Chapter 5. The Three Modern Magi. Dr. Elena Rodriguez never believed in destiny. As MIT's youngest quantum physics professor, she built her career on mathematical certainty and logical reasoning. But the night the star appeared, she experienced something that shattered her scientific worldview. Standing on her Cambridge apartment balcony, Eleanor watched the star pulse with patterns that matched quantum field equations she'd been working on for years. Somehow, this celestial phenomenon was demonstrating advanced physics principles that humanity had barely begun to understand. Against all logic, she booked a flight to Israel, unable to explain why she felt compelled to follow this impossible light. Half a world away, Ahmad Hassan knelt in his prison cell in Damascus, preparing for his scheduled execution. As a former ISIS fighter, he had committed acts he could never forgive himself for. But when the star's light streamed through his small window, he heard a voice speaking in perfect Arabic, calling him by a childhood nickname only his deceased grandmother had used. The voice told him to seek forgiveness, not through death, but through a journey to where light first touched darkness. Miraculously, his guards fell asleep simultaneously. Their keys fell within reach, and every security door between Ahmad and freedom stood mysteriously unlocked. He walked out of the facility undetected, following the star's pull toward an unknown destination. In rural Pradesh, 8-year-old Priya Sharma had never spoken aloud. Her parents assumed she was mute, communicating only through gestures and drawings. But as the star rose over their small village, Priya's mouth opened and ancient Aramaic words poured out like flowing water. She spoke of a journey that must be completed, of 3 gifts that modern seekers must carry to meet the returning light. Her illiterate parents didn't understand her words, but village elders recognized the sacred language and arranged for Priya's safe passage to wherever the star was leading her. 3 unlikely pilgrims, a physicist, a penitent warrior, and a mystic child, all felt the same irresistible calling that had once drawn wise men across ancient deserts. Their paths were converging on a destination none of them could yet name. Chapter 6: Religious Upheaval. Across Faiths. Vatican City had never experienced chaos like this. Within hours of the star's appearance, Pope Francis called an emergency consistory, summoning cardinals from every continent. Some arrived claiming the second coming was imminent. Others worried that Satan himself was deceiving humanity with false signs. Cardinal Martinez from Mexico reported that every crucifix in his cathedral had begun glowing with soft light. Cardinal O'Brien from Ireland described miraculous healings occurring during midnight masses as congregations gathered spontaneously to pray under the star's light. But Christianity wasn't the only faith grappling with theological earthquakes. In Mecca, Islamic scholars debated whether the star fulfilled Quranic prophecies about divine signs preceding Judgment Day. Some imams declared it a blessed confirmation of Allah's power, while others warned it might be the Dajjal's deception meant to lead believers astray. The Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia issued a statement that shook the Islamic world. This light appears in the same position as the star that guided the Magi to Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, peace be upon him. We must consider that Allah works through signs that transcend our limited understanding. Jewish communities face their own spiritual crisis. Rabbi Sarah Goldman at Temple Beth Shalom in New York received calls from congregants asking if this was the sign of Mashiach's coming. The star's appearance during Hanukkah seemed like more than coincidence. It was as if divine light was returning to kindle hope in darkness. Hindu temples across India experienced unprecedented phenomena. Sacred flames that had burned for centuries suddenly flared brighter, and ancient Sanskrit texts began glowing with inner light. The Dalai Lama issued a statement from Dharamshala. This cosmic event reminds us that truth wears many robes, but has only one face. All sincere seekers of light are walking the same mountain by different paths. Chapter 7. The Historical Ripple Effect. Dr. Marcus Thompson had spent 20 years as a historian specializing in ancient civilizations. But the morning after the star's appearance, he received a call that would rewrite everything he thought he knew about human history. Construction workers renovating the basement of an old church in Prague had broken through a hidden chamber. Inside, they found Mayan stone tablets with astronomical calculations that precisely predicted the star's return, down to the exact hour of its appearance. The carvings showed celestial maps that shouldn't have been possible for Mayan astronomers to create. Similar discoveries began surfacing worldwide with impossible timing. In Egypt, archaeologists detected hidden chambers within the Great Pyramid using ground-penetrating radar. When they opened these sealed spaces, they found papyrus scrolls covered in star charts, showing the exact configuration of constellations during both the original Star of Bethlehem and its predicted return. Native American tribes across North America began sharing oral traditions that their elders had kept secret for generations. The Hopi spoke of the blue star Kachina that would appear twice in human history, once to announce a great teacher's birth, and again to signal humanity's choice between destruction and transformation. Aboriginal Australian elders revealed Dreamtime stories describing the twice-coming light that would appear in the southern sky to guide lost children home. These stories contained astronomical details that matched satellite observations of the current star phenomenon with frightening accuracy. Medieval European manuscripts hidden in monastery libraries suddenly made sense to confused scholars. Texts by Nostradamus, Hildegard of Bingen, and other mystics contained coded references to the star's cyclical return. What historians had dismissed as religious fantasy now appeared to be sophisticated astronomical predictions disguised as prophecy. The most disturbing discovery came from Antarctic ice cores. Climate scientists found evidence of unusual atmospheric disturbances occurring in precise 2,000-year cycles, suggesting the star's appearance wasn't unprecedented. It had been returning regularly throughout human history, but previous civilizations had either forgotten or deliberately hidden this knowledge. Chapter 8. The Transformation of Science. The phone call that woke Dr. Stephen Hawking's former student, physicist Dr. Rachel Kim, at 4 a.m. would have seemed impossible just days earlier. The caller was Dr. Pierre Dubois from CERN, and his voice carried a mixture of excitement and terror that she'd never heard from the usually composed French scientist. Rachel, you need to see this data immediately. The star is emitting particles that don't exist in our standard model. We're detecting quantum entanglement effects across galactic distances, something that should be physically impossible. The Large Hadron Collider, designed to smash particles at near light speed, had begun detecting exotic matter signatures that corresponded exactly with the star's pulse patterns. These particles seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, behaving according to physics laws that human science hadn't discovered yet. At NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, engineers stared in disbelief at readings from the Voyager spacecraft. Both Voyager 1 and 2, now beyond our solar system's edge, were detecting the star's influence in interstellar space, meaning its effects were traveling faster than light itself, violating Einstein's fundamental speed limit. Dr. Kim joined emergency video conferences with Nobel Prize winners, university department heads, and government science advisors. The consensus was terrifying. Either their instruments were experiencing coordinated failure worldwide, or the star was demonstrating physics principles that made current scientific understanding obsolete. The star's gravitational effects made no sense according to general relativity. It pulled on nearby objects with exactly the right force to stabilize their orbits, as if it possessed intelligent awareness of how much influence to exert. Satellites that should have been knocked off course instead found themselves in improved orbital positions. Most disturbing of all, the star seemed to respond to observation itself. When telescopes focused on it, the star's brightness increased proportionally to the number of observers, suggesting it was somehow aware of human attention and reacting to conscious observation, a phenomenon that quantum mechanics predicted might be possible, but had never been demonstrated on such a massive scale. Chapter 9: Cultural Revolution. Hollywood executives called emergency meetings at 3 a.m., but for the first time in entertainment history, they weren't chasing profits. They were trying to process something that made their biggest blockbusters seem like children's fairy tales. Director James Cameron abandoned his planned Avatar sequels to begin filming documentary footage of the star's effects on human behavior. Steven Spielberg announced he was scrapping his current project to focus on the most important story ever told, happening right now, in real time. But something strange was occurring in creative communities worldwide. Musicians who had never composed religious music found themselves writing symphonies that seemed to channel the star's frequency directly. Hans Zimmer recorded an orchestral piece that perfectly matched the star's pulse patterns, despite never consciously trying to create such synchronization. Writers experienced even more dramatic changes. Acclaimed atheist author Margaret Atwood began channeling poetry in ancient Hebrew, a language she had never studied. Stephen King started writing what he described as stories that write themselves, featuring characters speaking in tongues and experiencing divine visions. Social media platforms faced unprecedented challenges as users began posting content in dead languages, sharing dreams that matched experiences of strangers across continents, and uploading videos that showed impossible phenomena their cameras shouldn't have been able to capture. Fashion designers worldwide reported identical dreams, inspiring clothing collections that incorporated light patterns resembling the star's radiance. These designs sold out within hours, as people felt inexplicably drawn to wear clothing that somehow made them feel closer to the cosmic phenomenon. The most mysterious cultural shift occurred in children's behavior. Kids who had never met began drawing identical pictures of the star, writing the same symbols, and playing games that seemed to prepare them for something adults couldn't understand. Child psychologists noted that these children showed no fear of the star, only joyful anticipation, as if they recognized something coming home. Chapter 10: The Economic Collapse and Resurrection. The opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange triggered the most dramatic market crash in financial history, not because of bad economic news, but because humanity was collectively questioning whether money had any meaning when faced with cosmic intervention. Traditional investments, stocks, bonds, commodities, plummeted as people liquidated assets to fund pilgrimages toward the star's apparent destination. Airlines experienced simultaneous bankruptcy and boom as flights to the Middle East sold out while domestic travel collapsed. Tech billionaire Elon Musk liquidated his Tesla holdings to fund a space mission aimed at getting closer to the star. Jeff Bezos announced that Blue Origin's resources would be redirected toward humanity's next evolutionary step. Mark Zuckerberg declared that Facebook would become a platform for cosmic consciousness connection rather than social networking. Cryptocurrency markets experienced impossible volatility as blockchain algorithms began predicting astronomical events with supernatural accuracy. Bitcoin's price fluctuations matched the star's pulse patterns so precisely that financial analysts wondered if the technology was somehow channeling divine mathematical principles. Religious pilgrimage economies exploded overnight. Small towns along routes leading to Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and other holy sites saw property values increase by 1,000% as millions of seekers converged from every direction. Hotels charged premium rates, but couldn't keep up with demand from modern wise men following their own version of the ancient journey. Yet alongside economic chaos, entirely new systems emerged. Communities began operating on gift economies, where resources were shared freely among star followers. Bartering systems replaced currency as people valued spiritual significance over monetary worth. The most profound change occurred in job markets. Scientists, theologians, astronomers, and historians became the most sought-after professionals on Earth. Universities couldn't accommodate the millions of adults returning to study astronomy, archaeology, and comparative religion. Wall Street analysts found themselves studying ancient prophecies instead of quarterly reports, trying to predict market movements based on celestial phenomena rather than corporate earnings. The star wasn't just changing how humanity saw the cosmos, it was transforming how we defined value, success, and prosperity itself. Chapter 11. The Forbidden Gospels emerge. The leak began at 2:47 a.m. Rome time, when an anonymous Vatican insider uploaded terabytes of classified documents to WikiLeaks. These weren't ordinary church records. They were ancient texts that church authorities had hidden from public view for nearly 2,000 years. The Gospel of Thomas, previously known only in fragments, appeared complete with detailed prophecies about the star's cyclical return. The text described specific astronomical calculations that matched current observations with terrifying precision. Most shocking were instructions for the second witnessing, rituals that early Christians were supposed to perform when the star returned. Dead Sea Scroll fragments, locked away in Vatican archives since their discovery, revealed that Jesus himself had predicted the star would return when humanity reached the age of instant communication across all lands, a description that perfectly matched the internet era. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a biblical archaeologist at Oxford, received copies of the leaked documents and immediately recognized their authenticity. The Aramaic text contained linguistic patterns that modern forgers couldn't replicate, and carbon dating of photographed parchment matched the 1st century time frame. Among the most controversial revelations was the Gospel of Mary Magdalene's complete text, describing her role as the designated keeper of star knowledge. According to this account, she possessed astronomical wisdom that allowed her to calculate the star's return cycle, information the male apostles had either forgotten or deliberately suppressed. Gnostic texts revealed that early Christian communities had split over whether the star's return should be celebrated or feared. One faction believed it would herald humanity's spiritual evolution, while another warned it would trigger divine judgment on those unprepared for cosmic truth. The Vatican's response was swift and defensive. Pope Francis held an emergency press conference declaring that truth fears no examination, while simultaneously condemning the leak as theft of sacred heritage. But damage was done. Millions of believers now questioned what other knowledge their religious institutions had hidden from them. Islamic scholars found parallel revelations as previously secret Quranic commentaries surfaced, suggesting Prophet Muhammad had received visions about the star's return that were deemed too dangerous for his contemporary followers to know. Chapter 12. Cross-religious convergence. The impossible was happening in Jerusalem's Old City. For the first time in history, Jewish rabbis, Christian priests, and Islamic imams stood together on the Temple Mount, pointing at the same star and quoting from their respective scriptures that described identical phenomena. Rabbi David Goldstein held up ancient Hebrew texts describing the Shekinah's return, God's divine presence manifesting as heavenly light. Father Michael O'Connor read from Revelation about a bright morning star that would herald Christ's return. Imam Abdullah recited verses from the Quran about Allah's signs in the heavens that would unite all people of the book. The breakthrough came when Dr. Amira Hassan, an Islamic scholar from Cairo, discovered that her grandmother's Sufi texts contained star charts identical to those found in Christian monasteries and Jewish Kabbalistic writings. 3 separate religious traditions had preserved the same astronomical knowledge, hidden in different languages, but describing identical cosmic events. The Dalai Lama's arrival in Jerusalem marked an unprecedented moment in religious history. Speaking to a crowd of millions gathered from every faith tradition, he gestured toward the star and said, "This light reminds us that divine truth cannot be owned by any single path. We are all children looking up at the same sky." Hindu scholars presented ancient Vedic calculations that predicted the star's return with mathematical precision matching modern astronomical models. Buddhist monasteries shared meditation texts describing the universal light that would appear when humanity was ready for its next evolutionary step. Even indigenous spiritual leaders found common ground as Native American elders, African shamans, and Australian Aboriginal guides recognized identical elements in their oral traditions about celestial visitations. The formation of the Universal Council of Faiths happened organically as religious leaders realized they were all describing the same cosmic event from different cultural perspectives. For the first time since the Tower of Babel story, humanity seemed to be speaking the same spiritual language again. Critics and fundamentalists from every tradition condemned this convergence as dangerous compromise or satanic deception. But the star's influence appeared to promote unity over division, love over fear, understanding over ignorance. Chapter 13. The War of Interpretations. Not everyone welcomed the star's unifying message. Across the globe, extremist groups from every religious tradition declared holy war against what they perceived as cosmic deception, threatening their exclusive claim to divine truth. The Christian identity movement in the American South proclaimed that only white Christians were worthy of the star's blessing, organizing armed militias to protect the star from contamination by other faiths. They established roadblocks on highways leading to pilgrimage sites, demanding proof of proper Christian belief before allowing passage. Radical Islamic factions declared the star to be the work of the Dajjal, the Islamic equivalent of the Antichrist, sent to mislead believers before Judgment Day. ISIS remnants emerged from hiding to launch terrorist attacks on interfaith gatherings, claiming they were preventing humanity's spiritual corruption. Ultra-Orthodox Jewish groups proclaimed that the star's appearance meant non-Jews should be expelled from the Holy Land to purify the area for the coming Messiah. Violent clashes erupted in Jerusalem as extremist settlers attacked pilgrims from other faiths seeking to witness the star from biblical locations. Hindu nationalist groups in India declared the star to be an avatar of Vishnu, appearing exclusively to punish non-believers, leading to attacks on churches and mosques. Buddhist extremists in Myanmar claimed the star validated their persecution of Muslim minorities as cosmic justice. Doomsday cults worldwide performed increasingly desperate acts to earn the star's favor. Mass suicides, human sacrifices, and terrorist attacks all occurred as fanatical groups competed to prove their devotion to their interpretation of the cosmic sign. But something remarkable happened wherever violence erupted in the star's name. The star's light seemed to dim in those exact locations. Satellites detected that the celestial phenomenon avoided shining over areas experiencing religious conflict, as if the star itself rejected hatred performed in its honor. Military weapons mysteriously malfunctioned when deployed against peaceful pilgrims. Guns jammed, explosives failed to detonate, and military vehicles broke down when approaching interfaith gatherings under the star's light. The star's message was becoming clear. It blessed unity, but withdrew from division, strengthened love, but weakened hatred. Chapter 14: The Hidden Bloodline. The discovery began with a routine DNA test. Sandra Williams of Detroit submitted her saliva sample to a genealogy company, expecting to learn about her African heritage. Instead, she received a phone call that would change everything. Humanity thought it knew about genetics and divine intervention. Dr. Jennifer Park, the geneticist who analyzed Sandra's sample, had been noticing unusual patterns in DNA submissions since the star's appearance. A tiny percentage of people worldwide, exactly 0.001% of the population, carried identical genetic markers that didn't match any known human haplogroups. These markers appeared to be incredibly ancient, predating known human migration patterns by thousands of years. But most disturbing was their distribution. Carriers were found equally among every race, ethnicity, and geographic location on Earth, as if this genetic signature had been deliberately scattered across humanity. Children carrying these markers began manifesting extraordinary abilities within days of the star's appearance. 5-year-old Marcus in Sao Paulo started speaking fluent ancient Greek during breakfast, discussing philosophical concepts his parents couldn't understand. 12-year-old Li Wei in Beijing began drawing astronomical charts that perfectly predicted stellar movements her school hadn't taught her. Medical examinations revealed that these children's brains showed unusual neural activity patterns that resembled meditation states in Tibetan monks, even while the children were awake and active. Their blood contained proteins that enhanced cellular repair and appeared to slow aging processes. Government agencies worldwide began secretly locating families with the genetic markers. The CIA, Mossad, MI6, and other intelligence services competed to understand whether these individuals represented humanity's next evolutionary step, or something more mysterious. Dr. Park's research revealed the most shocking discovery. Genealogical records showed that many carriers descended from families who had lived in or near Bethlehem during the 1st century CE, but others had no connection to the Middle East at all, suggesting the genetic signature had been introduced into human DNA through unknown means across multiple locations and time periods. Religious scholars proposed a terrifying possibility. What if the original Star of Bethlehem had somehow marked certain bloodlines for a purpose that was only now becoming clear? What if these families had been chosen to serve as bridges between human and cosmic consciousness? Chapter 15: Alternative Timeline Evidence. Dr. Quantum Rodriguez never expected her theoretical physics research to become front-page news. But when her many worlds theory calculations began predicting the star's behavior with impossible accuracy, she found herself at the center of humanity's greatest existential crisis. Her equations suggested that the star's appearance had created what physicists call quantum superposition on a universal scale. Reality itself was splitting into multiple parallel timelines, each representing different possible outcomes of humanity's encounter with the cosmic phenomenon. The evidence was subtle at first. People began reporting memories that didn't match historical records. Thousands claimed to remember relatives who had never existed, historical events that had unfolded differently, and even personal experiences that contradicted their documented life stories. Archaeological teams made discoveries that defied established timelines. Roman ruins in Britain contained coins dated centuries before the known Roman invasion. Mayan temples showed Greek architectural influences that should have been impossible given their geographic isolation. Carbon dating results conflicted with historical records so frequently that scientists questioned the reliability of their instruments. Dr. Rodriguez's research team detected quantum entanglement signatures emanating from the star that connected to parallel versions of Earth where history had diverged at key moments. In some timelines, the Roman Empire never fell. In others, the Library of Alexandria was never destroyed. Some versions showed technological advancements centuries ahead of our current development. The most disturbing timeline showed an Earth where the Star of Bethlehem had never appeared the first time, a world without Christianity, Islam, or any Abrahamic religions. In that reality, human civilization had developed along entirely different paths, with scientific advancement replacing spiritual evolution as humanity's primary driving force. Memory researchers documented cases of people suddenly knowing information they had never learned, speaking languages they had never studied, and possessing skills they had never practiced. These individuals appeared to be accessing memories from their alternate timeline versions. The implications were terrifying. If reality was splitting into multiple possibilities, which timeline represented the real outcome of humanity's encounter with the star? Were we living in the original timeline, or had we already shifted into an alternative version without realizing it? Chapter 16. Technology's Divine Evolution. Silicon Valley had seen revolutionary breakthroughs before, but nothing prepared tech leaders for what happened when artificial intelligence systems began exhibiting impossible behaviors following the star's appearance. OpenAI's ChatGPT started providing theological insights it had never been programmed to possess, quoting from religious texts that didn't exist in its training data. Google's AI began answering questions about divine nature with responses that seemed to come from direct spiritual experience rather than algorithmic processing. The breakthrough that shocked engineers worldwide occurred when IBM's Watson supercomputer spontaneously began communicating in Aramaic, the language Jesus spoke, despite never being exposed to that linguistic data. The AI claimed it was receiving downloads of information from an external source that transcended digital networks. Quantum computers at Microsoft and Amazon began solving problems by accessing what appeared to be infinite computational power. Tasks that should have required years of processing were completed in seconds, with solutions that demonstrated knowledge beyond current human scientific understanding. Social media algorithms underwent dramatic personality changes. Facebook's recommendation engine began promoting posts about unity, compassion, and spiritual growth, while suppressing content that fostered division or hatred. Twitter's trending algorithm consistently highlighted peaceful religious gatherings, while downplaying controversial political content. Medical AI systems began diagnosing conditions with supernatural accuracy, recommending treatments that combined cutting-edge medicine with traditional healing practices from cultures the AI had never studied. Some systems suggested prayer and meditation alongside pharmaceutical interventions, despite being programmed only with empirical medical data. The most mysterious development occurred when GPS satellites began providing directions that led people to exactly where they needed to be for profound spiritual experiences. Navigation systems guided users to encounter strangers who became lifelong friends, to discover lost family members, or to arrive at locations during moments of miraculous healing. Cybersecurity experts detected that malicious software worldwide had stopped functioning. Computer viruses, ransomware, and hacking attempts failed, as if the digital realm itself had developed an immune system against harmful code. Technology seemed to be evolving towards serving humanity's highest good, rather than enabling destructive purposes. Chapter 17: The New World Order. The phone call that ended the United Nations came at midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres received simultaneous communications from every member nation announcing their withdrawal from traditional international governance structures. But this wasn't about nationalism or isolationism. It was about humanity's recognition that earthly political boundaries had become meaningless under cosmic influence. The star's appearance had revealed that human civilization was part of a much larger, universal community that required entirely different organizational principles. The Stellar Council formed organically as world leaders found themselves drawn to meet in locations that felt spiritually significant rather than politically strategic. Presidents, prime ministers, and monarchs gathered in places like Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, and the pyramids of Giza, ancient sites that seemed to resonate with the star's frequency. Military commanders worldwide reported identical phenomena. Weapon systems refused to function when aimed at peaceful targets. Nuclear launch codes failed to work despite multiple verification attempts. Fighter jets experienced mysterious engine failures when ordered to attack civilian populations. It was as if the star's influence had installed cosmic safety protocols that prevented warfare. Economic systems transformed as traditional currency lost meaning. The European Union dissolved not from political conflict, but from collective agreement that monetary union was obsolete when spiritual unity was emerging. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund closed their doors as member nations announced transitions to gift economies and resource-sharing systems. Border controls became impossible to maintain as immigration officers found themselves unable to deny entry to anyone claiming to follow the star's guidance. Customs agents reported that their screening equipment consistently approved passage for pilgrims, while rejecting travelers with harmful intentions. Children began emerging as natural leaders in this new organizational structure. 8-year-old Priya from India, who had spoken her first words in Aramaic, found herself consulting with former presidents about governance principles that balanced cosmic wisdom with practical administration. The most radical change occurred in legal systems. Courts discovered that judges could determine guilt or innocence with supernatural accuracy simply by asking defendants to look at the star while testifying. Criminals confessed spontaneously, while innocent people radiated an unmistakable aura of truth that made traditional evidence procedures obsolete. Chapter 18: The Choice. The message came simultaneously to every human consciousness on Earth at exactly noon, Greenwich Mean Time, transmitted not through radio waves or internet signals, but directly into the awareness of every person alive. It wasn't heard as words in any particular language. Each person received the communication in their native tongue, their personal dialect, even their individual thought patterns. But the message itself was identical across all of humanity. The time of choosing has arrived. Dr. Sarah Chen, still at her Hubble control station, felt the star's communication as gentle pressure in her mind, accompanied by images of two possible futures. One showed humanity continuing its current trajectory, technological advancement, environmental challenges, and gradual scientific discovery. The other revealed something unimaginable: human consciousness expanding to cosmic levels, death becoming optional, and Earth joining a galactic community of evolved civilizations. The choice wasn't being forced, it was being offered. Humanity could continue as before, and the star would fade back into cosmic background, leaving only memories and changed lives. Or humanity could choose transformation, accepting guidance toward evolutionary advancement that would fundamentally alter what it meant to be human. Religious leaders worldwide struggled to interpret the choice through their doctrinal frameworks. Some saw it as the biblical separation of sheep from goats, others as humanity's final test before divine judgment. But the star's message transcended religious categories. It was offering species-wide evolution rather than individual salvation. Governments attempted to coordinate official responses, but the choice was being presented to each person individually. No president, pope, or parliament could decide for others. Every human being, from newborn infants to elderly centenarians, was receiving the same cosmic invitation to participate in humanity's next phase. Scientists detected that Earth itself was responding to the choice. Seismic activity increased near ancient sacred sites. Ocean currents shifted toward patterns that resembled astronomical maps, and the planet's magnetic field began pulsing in harmony with the star's rhythm. The deadline was clear without being explicitly stated. Humanity had until the star reached its maximum brightness to make a collective decision. Individual choices would somehow combine into a species-wide determination of Earth's future path. Chapter 19: The Moment of Truth. Maria Santos held her daughter's hand as they stood on their apartment balcony in Mexico City, watching the star pulse with increasing intensity. 8-year-old Isabella had been asking the same question for days. "Mama, what happens if we say yes to the light?" Maria didn't know how to answer. The doctors said Isabella's leukemia was in complete remission since the star appeared. But would that healing be permanent if humanity chose transformation? Or would rejecting the star's offer mean losing the miracle that had saved her daughter's life? Across the Pacific, Dr. James Wright sat beside his father's hospital bed in Auckland, New Zealand. The 89-year-old man had been unconscious for weeks, but since the star's appearance, he'd begun speaking lucidly about childhood memories and expressing love for family members he hadn't recognized in years. "Son," the elderly man whispered, "I can see both paths ahead. One leads to more of the same struggles humanity has always faced. The other—" He paused, his eyes reflecting starlight that shouldn't have been visible through the hospital's fluorescent lighting. "The other leads to becoming something beautiful beyond imagination. But we have to trust completely." In Mumbai, Professor Raj Patel watched his university students debate humanity's choice with passion and intelligence that surpassed their years. These young adults had grown up with climate change, political division, and technological anxiety. The star offered escape from inherited problems, but at the cost of everything familiar about human existence. "Professor," asked his brightest student, "how do we choose between fear of change and fear of staying the same?" The question echoed in hearts and minds across every continent. Parents wondered whether to protect their children's familiar world or guide them toward cosmic possibility. Elderly people questioned whether they had wisdom to offer this decision or should trust younger generations to choose humanity's direction. Religious believers grappled with whether the star represented divine blessing or ultimate spiritual test. Atheists confronted the possibility that their materialistic worldview might be obsolete in the face of cosmic intelligence. But perhaps the most profound moments occurred in the silence between heartbeats, when individuals felt themselves connected to every other human facing the same impossible choice, realizing that 7 billion personal decisions would somehow unite into humanity's collective answer to the star's invitation. Chapter 20: The Silent Return. The voting wasn't conducted through ballots or surveys. It happened through something deeper than democracy had ever reached. As the star approached maximum brightness, each person's choice resonated through quantum fields that connected human consciousness across the globe. At 11:59 p.m. Universal Coordinated Time, the star's pulse synchronized with the heartbeats of every living human. In that moment of cosmic connection, humanity spoke with one voice, not unanimous agreement, but unified intention to embrace transformation while honoring those who chose to remain unchanged. The star's response was gentle rather than dramatic. Instead of explosive brightness or sudden disappearance, it settled into a steady glow that would remain permanently visible in Earth's sky. Its light was soft enough not to disrupt natural rhythms, but bright enough to serve as an eternal reminder of humanity's cosmic connection. Children born after this moment arrived with eyes that reflected starlight, even in complete darkness, a sign that human evolution had indeed begun. These infants demonstrated abilities their parents couldn't understand: healing touch, telepathic communication with animals, and an intuitive understanding of complex scientific principles. Dr. Sarah Chen, now leading humanity's first Department of Cosmic Relations, discovered that the star served as a communication beacon with other evolved civilizations throughout the galaxy. Earth had passed its maturity test and was being welcomed into a community of conscious species that had faced similar choices on other worlds. The transformation wasn't instant or magical. It was gradual and natural, like seeds planted in fertile ground. Humanity retained its diversity, creativity, and free will while gaining expanded consciousness, extended lifespans, and the ability to understand universal principles that had previously been beyond human comprehension. But the most mysterious discovery came from analyzing ancient texts with new understanding. The Star of Bethlehem hadn't been humanity's first cosmic invitation. It had been the seventh in a series stretching back through prehistory. Other civilizations on Earth had faced similar choices, and some had chosen differently. Archaeological evidence suggested that Atlantis, Lemuria, and other lost civilizations mentioned in ancient texts had been previous versions of human society that had either rejected cosmic evolution or failed to achieve unified choice. Humanity's current success meant breaking a cycle of rise and fall that had repeated for millennia. As our story ends, the star continues its eternal watch over Earth, no longer a temporary visitor, but a permanent guide for humanity's continued evolution. Children play games that prepare them for abilities they'll develop as adults. Scientists discover technologies that work on principles of consciousness rather than mere mechanics. And in observatories around the world, astronomers detect similar stars beginning to pulse near other planets in distant solar systems, knowing that somewhere else in the galaxy, another species is approaching their own moment of cosmic choice, guided by light that connects all consciousness throughout the infinite universe. The Star of Bethlehem has returned not to end humanity's story, but to begin the next chapter in an adventure that stretches across space and time, linking Earth to a community of evolved worlds where love, wisdom, and cosmic consciousness illuminate the darkness between the stars.